Great picture you can see, isn't it? It was taken in September 1918, and part of this picture is the reason why I was rowing down the Somme in May of 2014 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the war, and really to ask the question, why are we remembering a war that happened over 100 years ago? If you live in Britain, really the iconic thing is the Battle of the Somme, and you can see here on this map the River Somme and St Quentin, which is the bridge over the canal where that picture was taken. This was a BBC TV film that I saw where a guy visited the bridge, and this is me actually having driven down to St Quentin, and on the bridge where that photograph was taken in September 18, it was actually part of the old Hindenburg line, and that's why I went to the bridge. And going down, trying to get down the embankment with my sculling boat was actually a real difficult job. So I'm trying to look there. You can see Richard Holmes, who made the original BBC film, trying to struggle down. So I had to get my scull off the bridge and down into the canal. And it's a beautiful old bridge, and that's exactly how it was in 1918. But I did get on the canal, and it's a beautiful scull, which was the first bit of my sort of odyssey down the Somme River. And there I go, down underneath the bridge. The water was so still, and it was actually quite a warm day, and there was a lot of blossom on the river. And in 1918, September 1918, the British and American troops crossed this part of the St Quentin Canal with life jackets from cross-channel ferries. And there's the tunnel which I sculled up to. It's about 4 or 5 kilometres long, and in the First World War the Germans used it as a store because it was safe from all the Allied artillery. You can see the picture there from 1918. There's me taken from the bridge. Nice technique, I hope, making nice holes in the water, but it really was good to get on the water and start this odyssey down the Somme River. I think the thing around this canal was there was actually no other boats on it at all. It was really very quiet, and as such, I really enjoyed it. It was a good place to start. It's not the Somme River proper, but this canal is connected to the Somme, which is a little bit further down south. So I was on the canal for about half an hour, 35 minutes, just really to test out, see how my boat was after the drive. And yeah, it was a bit of an adventure, as the whole trip was to prove to be, particularly scrambling down those banks and finding a place to try and get the boat in. That was one of the most difficult things. It was actually pretty challenging on this canal, but it was going to be far more difficult on the Somme River. Here is me at Peronne, just getting my boat into the Somme Canal. Actually, it was the Somme Canal I was going to go down. It goes next to the Somme River, and this is me setting off on my odyssey down the actual Somme Canal. It goes out, I think, to the Canal du Nord. It was quite busy. There's a few barges you'll see during the trip, and then it goes into a much quieter phase. But I was there with my roadie, Chris Cross, who was taking all the pictures. And again, this was a challenge finding a place to boat. There you can see the Canal du Nord, I think it is, which goes into the Somme Canal. It's where you come out first of all, and it's a bit of a big canal. You can see the barges that have just gone down the river and really shaken up the water. It's going to get a lot quieter when you get into the Canal du Somme. What you see here is me sculling on the Canal du Somme. Just get a picture of what it's like. The music you can hear in the background is actually written by one of the soldiers who was killed, F.S. Kelly. More of him later, but brilliant sculler, won the Diamonds 3 times, stroked the Olympic 8 in 1908. And this is part of his tribute to his mate Rupert Brooke, the famous poet who died of blood poisoning on the way to fighting Gallipoli in 1915. And it was a bit of a theme to the trip, you can see round the big Canal du Nord, but shortly going to be on the Canal of the Somme. This is much more like it. It's the Somme Canal. The bit I was on before was Canal du Nord, which was kind of big and industrial out of Peronne, but as you can see, you ahead of me, this is really
quite nice and quite pleasant. And over on to my left are the fields which the French army successfully assaulted in the first days of July, unlike the British army, towards Peronne, which is back there. And you do get a sense now of being really quiet and the river, maybe boating at the bassin at Peronne, which kind of a bit industrialised. But this is really quiet, and I'm really looking forward to sculling up the Somme. Basically, I guess towards the through the French front line to where the offensive started on the 1st of July, and then up towards the locks at Vaux, and then head up towards the British. So quite excited. Beautiful water, as you can see. Lost the big canal boats. Biggest danger I've got to face is fishermen's lines. There's a view of what's up in front. Let's see what's there. It's actually a really beautiful piece of river to scull on. I just kind of stopped off at this little place over there where the banks subsided. Sometimes in the chalk soil you can see traces of old sort of rust from shells that have just either bits of shrapnel or whole bits of shells are found in rivers before. Not in this case, but the river's absolutely beautiful. You can see in front it's kind of straightened out. There are sort of bendy bits around back there, but it's a lovely piece of water to scull on. Absolutely nothing. It's kind of 6:20 in the evening. Temperature's great. In t-shirts, and you do really get an atmosphere of, you know, something happening. It's a beautiful place, beautiful, smooth, calm, lovely river, lots of bird song and wildlife, and I guess this is what the River Somme's all about, rather than, you know, what it's associated with back in Britain, which is the 1st of July. And here's the real River Somme, guys. Hope to see some more of it.
Low bridges on the Somme. There was only about 2 or 3 inches of clearance when I lay right back down in the boat to go under these bridges on the Somme Canal. And the next day, it was Sunday, kind of retraced the route in the car. This is on the Flacourt Plateau, which is where the French forces were so successful. And as you'd expect, a lot of graveyards here. Is one of the French colonial troops who fell in 1916 in the Battle of the Somme. The French were extremely successful in that battle, at least on the first day, much more so than the British. They had a better artillery technique, and their casualties were 1,500 on the first day, with a lot of gains compared to the British, who lost 60,000 men. And of course, all over you do see these incredible vistas. The Somme Canal and river is in that valley behind me, and photo opportunities. I mean, I took the blades to celebrate the rowers' lives who were lost in the First World War, and these dramatic French war memorials that you do see everywhere. This one in the town of Cappy, which was actually where the Red Baron took off for his last flight. Really coloured, dramatic image. And just down from there, well, you can see the beautiful Somme River. This is the river rather than the canal. It's very difficult to scull on the river, which is why I was on the canal. But you can see how beautiful it is.
So this is absolutely beautiful. You can see down there, that's the River Somme, and there are these beautiful lakes that it's flowing into. Just if you come around here, it's one of the many bits of the lakes of the Somme, and just down that way you can see the church right in the distance. That's where the Somme Canal is. So it's really beautiful here. Just looking round, you can see where the boat was from yesterday, and the lovely scenery. It's stunningly beautiful.
So we mentioned the Red Baron. This is the cemetery where he was buried for 10 years. He was shot down in 1918 by an Australian troop. He was moved to actual cemetery in Berlin, but here I was laying a rose on one of the tombs of a German soldier, or 2 German soldiers buried under there, which was part of the trip to actually pay my respects. And as I say, if you go to the cemetery, this one's in Riqueval, which is on the British sector of the Somme, a bit further north. There's a photo of the Red Baron, which you can see at the cemetery. But I was really interested in a couple of the rowers who lost their lives in 1916, and this is Captain John Somers Smith, who was killed attacking Goncourt on the first day of the Somme. A rower, gold in the men's 4.
Somme here, which is just a bit away from the village of Goncourt, and you can see behind me in the background there's a British cemetery. These fields here are pretty open now. These are the fields that Smith and hundreds, thousands of other British troops assaulted on the 1st of July 1916, unsuccessfully trying to get to the village of Goncourt, which is just up behind me there. Pretty much nothing now, but they all died on these fields, and Smith is either buried somewhere under the ground there or maybe in an unknown body in the British cemetery behind me. Very sad.
So you can see the scenery, it's very flat, it's very open, and none of the British troops of Smith got anywhere near their target, the village of Goncourt. This is a panorama, what it must have looked like in July, fairly similar apart from the gun craters. And of course, Smith's body was never found, and the 72,000 missing are commemorated, British missing are commemorated on the Riqueval Memorial. And it's a really imposing monument, and on the many panels, and there is Smith's name, that I wanted to go and pay my respects to, leave a rose, and thought it appropriate, as he was stroke of that 1908 Olympic gold medal 4, to take the blades and to point out his name. And probably you can just see Smith's name there. And just not far from Riqueval, trying to find a cemetery of the other rower that I was interested in. This one's a cemetery at Martinside. You can see there are unexploded shells everywhere, just the farmers dumped them by the side of the cemetery, and they're unexploded ordnance, so you don't want to touch them because the army come along and take them away. So the next row I was interested in was Frederick Septimus Kelly, this amazing oarsman, 3 times diamond champion, stroke of the Olympic gold medal 8 in 1908, and here's a picture of him. A brilliant composer too, an Australian, went to Eton and to Oxford, but an amazing man, and fought in the Hood Battalion of the Royal Naval Division. You can see the fact he was an Australian is important. People were visiting him from Australia on Anzac Day, and left this picture in the Book of Remembrance at the cemetery. And striking career and beautiful music that he composed. And the graves were very strange in this cemetery. I've never seen graves this colour brown, I guess discoloured by the sun. And this is F.S. Kelly's grave. He died attacking Beaucourt-sur-l'Ancre, which is a little town right at the end of the Battle of the Somme, 1916 Battle of the Somme, in November the 13th, on November the 13th. And that's his grave there, marked with the skulls. And I was determined to get a skull on the river Ancre, which is actually impossible because it's too narrow, but there are lakes formed by the Ancre, and this is one of the lakes. It's a little just outside the town of Beaucourt-sur-l'Ancre, so not far from where Kelly was killed. And it was just a pleasure and a privilege to get out and to just do a few good strokes and mark the place where F.S. Kelly was killed in November 1913. Very rural, very beautiful, very quiet. When he was killed, it was very muddy right at the end of November. And here's me doing my little memorial skull on the lake, filmed by Chris Cross. And well, I'm sure nobody's been on that lake in a skull before. I don't know whether Kelly would have seen it or... Special moment, always first time. Skull on any bit of water, it's only a small lake. But it's really significant for me. It's a lake formed by the river Ancre, which is just over there. And the Ancre is a tiny small stream, can't really get my boat on it. But this is in the village of Beaucourt-sur-l'Ancre. And Beaucourt-sur-l'Ancre was where Frederick Septimus Kelly was killed assaulting in November 1916, right at the end of the Somme battle. The Olympic champion in rowing, the Henley champion diamond sculls as well before the First World War. And it's a private lake. There are some French fishermen
can probably see round on the bank over there. Just asked if we can get the boat on, and it's fantastic. Nice little scull on a beautiful lake. Got an Olympic champion in the same place. An Olympic champion was sadly killed while assaulting the village, just a stone's throw from where I am.
More shots of Kelly, striking young man, and me on the lake. Pensive, actually, pensive moment. And again, it can never reproduce what went on 100 years ago, but you do get a sense of history. And after that scull, we moved to quite a different place on the river, up really further south towards Amiens. This was near the village of Chipilly, and the Canal du Somme there. Well, what's significant about that was it was part of the British offensive in August the 8th, 1918, which pushed the German forces right back, their blackest day of the war. Cavalry was involved, and I was really struck by this Pieta-like statue of a British trooper tending his injured horse in Chipilly. And that's a picture of me from the bridge. It's a different view of the battle, really. I mean, the Somme was fought over throughout the war, and this is now bringing the 1918 battles into play. And this is the Australian Memorial at WW1. Amazing views, as you'll see just in a moment.
Stunning views. Just on top of the Australian War Memorial in WW1. About 19-20 miles that way is the Mont Saint-Quentin, way back in Peronne, where we started to row down the Somme the other day. And then as we go around, we can look out this way towards the valley of the Somme River, just following its course way back around there and going all the way around the corner down along towards Amiens, which is where we're headed. And then you can see just out there the direction of Amiens and the beautiful laid out rows of the cemetery. And I think probably if we walk down the steps, you can see the amazing flower display, the wreath laid on Anzac Day. You get a view at the bottom of the tower, just down there. Beautiful, stunning flowers at the bottom. That was laid on Anzac Day on the 25th of April. There's the memorial, the cemetery, and in the distance Amiens.
You can see what the actual memorial looks like there, the rows of graves on the side, a lot of them from 1918. Victoria crosses amongst them. There's one VC from the Canadian forces that were fighting in this area. And after visiting WW1, it was down to the town of Amiens, the major Allied centre for the battles of the Somme, and getting my boat out from that point, you just saw there was an absolute nightmare. It was the hardest part I had to get the boat in. Amiens was crowded, it was on a Sunday, there wasn't many places, there was a lot of cars parked, but it was good to get out in Amiens because that was the hub which the German offensive in 1918 was aiming for, and if the Ludendorff offensive had succeeded, then I think the First World War would have been effectively over, a wedge driven between the British and French. But Amiens held, it was never taken. The German forces got to within 7 or 8 miles of it. There's a great little rowing club there which nestles under the cathedral. And after Amiens it was off up to Abbeville, which is the River Somme I'm actually stood on before I sort of rowed the last bit, or sculled the last bit by the sea.
Well, we're now in the centre of Amiens, which is a pretty built up area. And actually, if I go around here, you can see, well, I'm right next, outside on the stages of Amiens Rowing Club. Nice building,
Nobody here, but here's the river Somme running through, or flowing through the middle of Amiens. I think if you just look over there, probably in the distance, maybe above the lampshade, you can see the top of Amiens Cathedral, which is kind of over there. So we're right now in the middle of Somme, and the river goes through Peronne, through the south of the battlefields of the Somme, and then the bit we did at Chipilly Ridge, and then it flows onwards from here down through the sea. It really is quite a different feel. Sunday afternoon, lots of people out. Of course, Amiens was the vital centre that the German army never managed to take in 1918, with its rail junctions, with its cathedral. Canal's a beautiful bit of stream on, so paddling is a bit tricky, but it is a lovely day and a lovely river, and I'm going to make headway towards Abbeville now and towards the sea. Here we are, just at the Somme. This time it's on the bridge at Abbeville. You can see how fast the river is. It's really flowing. Just turn around, and that direction's from Amiens. The reason this is significant, again, not just we're on the Somme, is it's the town of Abbeville, which is upstream of, or downstream, sorry, of Amiens. And of course this was to do with the Second World War, and the panzers of Guderian, as they were cutting through France in May of 1940, thrusted through the town of Abbeville, and in an attempt to sweep round and cut off the British forces. And Abbeville here was defended, I think, by the 51st Highland Division, then had to withdraw and mount a defensive heroic defence at Saint Valery. Of course, the 51st Highland Division fought on the back of the Somme in 1916, so there we are again in the Second World War. But this is the bridge over Abbeville, and we're going to head off down, not to Saint Valery, but Saint Valery-sur-Somme, where we're going to do some sculling, get the boat on the water for the last bit of this odyssey. So pensive, leaving leaving Abbeville to go up to Saint Valery-sur-Somme, which is the mouth of the Somme, right by the sea. There's what our car looked like for this trip. Well, I think we've gone about 70 kilometres down the river, and getting boated was really, really challenging. You can see the swirls because I had the lock gates right open, and there were loads of rocks everywhere. I wasn't sure that I should be getting on the river, but I was pretty determined to get out, and I had some roses which I wanted to lay on the water and sort of drift out to the sea. But the swirls made it a big challenge. You can see the sluice gates open at Saint Valery-sur-Somme there, but I did manage it. I guess determination played a key. It's a beautiful little port town if you get the chance to go there, and I sculled up that inside lane out of the main force of the river, just really to get out as near as I could round to the bend. We were pretty close on the ferry time for back home, as always happens on these occasions on the Sunday evening, and you can see the width of the river there, and that's me over the far side. Just wanted to place the roses that we'd brought to commemorate the soldiers' lives in the right place of the river. It's very picturesque little port town too. You get these little villages all over the place, and I think you can see when I did get eventually round to the corner past the town, there's the stern of my boat, and laying the roses and just seeing them drift away into the distance out towards the sea. And the roses symbolised all the rowers, all the soldiers who lost their lives, who were injured in the Somme Regatta. There's of course so many of them that lost their lives in that way. And I suppose the one that really struck me was FS Kelly, the remarkable Etonian and Oxford Australian scholar, killed in 1916. And I found this picture of him stroking that 8 to victory in the Olympics in 1908. A fitting tribute. So I think you can see behind me and over here is the town of Saint-Valery-sur-Somme. Saint-Valery is the last place that the Somme reaches before the sea. So out that way, around the corner of the Somme, is the sea, and I guess this is the last place that I'm going to be on my trip of the Somme. And so really I would like to just act a final act of commemoration. And I brought some roses, which I had from the beginning of the Somme in Peronne. And I guess roses here, and for me they represent Frederick Septimus Kelly, Olympic champion, Diamonds champion, Summer Smith, Olympic champion, the 2 rowers who died on the Somme July the 1st 1916, and right at the battle at the end of the Somme, November 1916. All the French soldiers that sacrificed and gave their lives for the assault. The first bit of the Somme we sculled from Peronne up downstream, and of course the many thousands, tens of thousands of Germans, British, French, Australians, New Zealanders, South Africans on the Somme. These roses will drift out towards the sea. Throw them in the Somme at the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. They're the roses, drifting away down to the sea. Godspeed. And I'm going home, back to Calais.